The waterfront terrace was packed with 300 people, and every one of them was pretending not to stare at Claire Thomas. I stood near the stone balustrade in a beige suit, chosen because it looked calm on camera, even under the hard afternoon sun. Behind me, the water flashed silver. Ahead of me, donors, investors, and board members gathered beneath white umbrellas and climbing flowers. I did not care about the flowers. I cared about sightlines. Who whispered, who avoided Claire's eyes, who held a phone at chest level, who leaned toward Julian Blackwood whenever he moved closer to the center of the terrace. Claire stood beside a blue and white planter in a light floral dress with a pale jacket over her shoulders. Her hand rose briefly toward her mouth as she smiled at an investor's joke, but I saw the truth behind the gesture. Her smile arrived half a second late. Her glass was untouched. Her eyes kept moving toward the terrace doors, where Julian waited like a man watching a trap. He had already set. My phone buzzed. Another anonymous post had started climbing. CEO under pressure. Staffers questioned Claire Thomas before Nexus merger vote. No named source, no documents, no dates. But the headline was already spreading. Reputation does not bleed like a wound. It leaks like water through a wall. Julian crossed the terrace toward her. I locked my phone and moved. I did not rush. Rushing signaled panic. And panic at charity gala was blood and expensive water. Claire saw me coming. Julian reached her first. "Claire," he said loud enough for the nearest donors. "Wonderful turnout, though. I admit I'm surprised you want to be this public today." Claire's smile held. "Why wouldn't I?" Julian tilted his head. "People are talking. The restructuring rumors. The staff complaint. The question of whether Nexus should finalize a merger with a CEO who has no personal or professional foundation right now. There was not numbers, not product, foundation. He wanted the board to see her as alone. I stepped beside Claire, close enough to be included, not close enough to make a spectacle. "Julian," I said. He looked at me like I was a stain on the tablecloth. "Miles Carter, always within earshot. Useful habit. Your job is PR, not board governance. My job is reputation integrity. Right now, you're repeating an anonymous post that originated from a server farm in Estonia used by contracted smear campaigns. Nora Bailey has the metadata. Legal scent preservation notices before lunch. The nearest donor stopped pretending not to listen. Julian's smile thinned. Accusing concerned parties of smear campaigns seems defensive. Repeating paid rumors at a charity event seems careless." Claire turned slightly toward me. Not enough for drama. Enough to show she heard every word. Julian lowered his voice. "You can't protect her from the vote? Miles." "No," I said, "but I can make sure the vote is based on facts instead of theater." Julian's jaw tightened. Then he retreated toward the bar. Claire kept smiling until he was out of range. Then her hand rose again, covering her mouth for one brief second. Not flirtation, not performance, just the effort of holding herself together beneath a terrace full of cameras. "That bought us what?" she asked quietly. 72 hours of doubt. She looked toward the water. "He's not attacking the company anymore. He's attacking me." "Yes." "The board thinks I'm isolated." "Yes." "And if Nexus believes that, they delay the final merger vote. Julian calls an emergency leadership review. You lose leverage before you enter the room." Claire's eyes stayed on the water. "I need an anchor." I pulled my phone halfway out. "I can draft a stability statement. Community partnerships, retention numbers, quarter-over-quarter growth." "No." She turned back to me. Not a statement. The string quartet changed songs. A camera clicked. Claire lowered her voice. "I need them to see that I'm not alone. I need you to act like my partner. Miles." I stopped moving. "No." She did not flinch, but the color in her face shifted. "I'm not asking for romance. I'm asking for optics. And I'm telling you, optics without guardrails become liabilities. You're my boss. I manage reputation for your company. You asking me to perform a personal relationship in front of board members creates power context risk, HR risk, merger disclosure risk, and exactly the narrative Julian wants if we do it badly." Her lips pressed together. "If you say no, your job does not change." "Good. Say that again when Nora is present." "Nora, legal counsel." If we discuss this further, she reviews in writing. You confirm I can refuse without consequence. My compensation does not change. I owe you no personal access. We set an end date, and we do not use physical intimacy as evidence. Relief moved across her face. That sounds like a yes. It is a condition for a meeting. Claire looked toward Julian, already speaking to 2 board members near the bar, then set the meeting tonight. Conference room C. Nora present. Nora Bailey arrived at 8:10 p.m. Claire sat at the far end. I sat across from her, not beside her. Distance mattered. Documentation mattered more. Nora looked at Claire first, explained the request. Claire folded her hands. Julian is using anonymous rumors to argue I'm unstable and isolated. The board is vulnerable because the Nexus merger has a leadership confidence clause. I asked Miles to act publicly like my partner for 6 weeks through the final merger vote. Nora turned to me. Do you want to do that? No. Claire's gaze flicked to me. I continued. I do not want to act like her partner as a vague personal favor. I would consider a limited reputation stability strategy if it is documented, consensual, non-coercive, legally reviewed, and does not require physical intimacy. Nora's pen moved. Claire, if Miles refuses, his job does not change. His pay does not change. His authority does not change. I will not retaliate. Miles, do you report directly, Claire? Operationally, yes. Contractually, my review is handled by the Communications Board Committee. Then I'm adding a firewall for this strategy. Your review and compensation go through Nora and the committee, not Claire. Claire nodded. Done. Nora looked between us. No kissing. No staged private moments. No home visits unless documented. No ambiguous late-night photos. No misleading transfers. No private gifts. No romantic promises. The public story is simple. You developed a quiet, personal relationship after the Seattle conference, kept it private to avoid distracting from the merger, and are no longer hiding because Julian turned personal stability into a board issue. Nora slid a blank page to Claire. Write this in your own words. Miles may say no at any time, Claire wrote. Then Nora pushed the page to me. Miles may say no at any time. His job, pay, authority, and standing at the company will not be affected. This strategy is for reputation stabilization only. He owes me no private affection, no physical access, and no personal performance outside agreed public contexts. Claire Thomas. I signed beneath her name. Nora collected the page. Good. First public move. I open my laptop. Not touch. Evidence of access. Tomorrow I enter the executive briefing with a corrected rumor map and her coffee order. I sit beside her, not behind her. She addresses me by my first name. No performance. Visible trust. Claire's smile faded, and if it starts feeling less staged, Nora stopped writing. I close the laptop halfway. Then we do nothing until the merger vote is over. The board thread is resolved, and the power context is clean. Claire held my gaze. Agreed. People typed faster, spoke softer, and watched doors more often. I entered the executive briefing at 9:05, carrying a blue folder, a rumor map, and a ceramic mug of black coffee with 1 sugar and cinnamon. The room quieted. Claire sat beneath the glass wall overlooking the city, one hand over financial reports, expression composed, eyes tired. I placed the mug beside her notepad. Before it gets cold, I said department heads noticed. Claire looked up. Thank you, Miles. Not Carter. Not Mr. Carter. Miles. A small shift, but corporate rooms fed on small shifts. I sat beside her and opened the folder. Julian's rumor map is moving through 3 channels. Staff forums, investor group chats, and 1 report at the Chronicle. We killed the first with metadata, slowed the second with performance data, and neutralized the third with legal exposure. Claire lifted the mug. Start with the reporter. I clicked to the next slide. Sarah Jenkins is in the lobby now. Half the room turned toward the glass wall. Claire did not. She looked at me. What is she carrying? A false HR complaint involving David Thorne, former executive assistant. It is sealed arbitration. If she prints it as hostile workplace evidence, the Chronicle becomes liable for tortious interference. Claire picked up a pen. Handle it. The room heard that too. not romance. Trust. 2. I went downstairs. Sarah Jenkins stood by reception with a folded paper and a journalist's smile. "Miles," she said. "Off the record?" "Nothing about a false HR complaint is off the record. You don't know what I have. I know David Thorne was terminated for selling internal memos to a competitor. I know the arbitration is sealed. I know Julian leaked it to you because he wants a headline before the board retreat." She stopped smiling. I handed her a legal notice. If you print sealed arbitration as a hostile workplace claim, Nora Bailey files before lunch. If you want the real story, ask why a board member is feeding seal material during a merger vote. Sarah looked toward the elevators. Julian said Claire is losing control. Julian says many things when he is losing the facts. The false HR story died before noon. By 4, the office knew Claire had trusted me in the room, and I had killed a rumor before it became a headline. That evening, Claire came to my office after the building emptied. Nora joined by video. Ethan Scott, the event organizer for the investor dinner, joined from a noisy hotel lobby. We built 6 weeks like a campaign. Seattle conference as origin point. Investor dinner as first controlled appearance. Waterfront gala as public confirmation. Board retreat as major risk. Final merger vote as finish line. Nora read the visual rules. No stage kissing. No closed-door private appearances. No body-focused posing. No hands on lower back. No whispered photos arranged for press. Public closeness must be explainable as conversation, crowd navigation, or business access. Ethan raised a hand. As the event guy, I love this clean sightlines, less chaos. Claire leaned back. So, our romantic strategy is clean calendar management. Our reputation strategy, I corrected. Her eyes moved to mine. Right. Nora did not miss it. Both of you remember the agreement? We did. The investor dinner was darkwood, low lighting, and expensive silence. Claire worked the room with polished confidence, explaining communications infrastructure and post-merger integration until dry numbers sounded like architecture. Julian hovered near the wine wall, waiting. At 8:15, I joined Claire's circle with a printed correction to a rumor about staff attrition. Not a touch, a document. "Claire," I said, handing it to her. Updated retention numbers verified by HR and Nora. She accepted the page without surprise. "Thank you, Miles." One investor glanced between us. "You two are very coordinated." Claire looked at the page, then at me. "We've had practice." Simple, warm, not excessive. Julian stepped in. "Practice is one word for it." I turned to him. "Preparation is another." The investor read the sheet. "This says attrition is down 6%. "Correct." Claire said the anonymous post used pre-restructuring projections, not actual exit data. Julian's mouth tightened. "You always seem to have a sheet of paper ready." "Miles, yes." That was not a compliment. I did not take it as one. Claire's hand lifted briefly toward her mouth, hiding the smallest smile before she turned back to the investor. The moment was small. It did more than a stage embrace ever could. It made the room believe we had a language. After dinner, Ethan texted, "Clean sightlines, no bad photos." Julian looked like he swallowed glass. "Excellent evening." I showed it to Claire in the lobby. She read it and looked at me. Ethan has a colorful style. He once described the donor seating dispute as a hostage negotiation with orchids. That sounds accurate. Outside, rain tapped the awning. Claire's car waited at the curb. "I can get home alone," she said. "I know. You do not have to walk me to the car for optics. There are no cameras. I know that, too." She studied me. "Then why are you still standing here?" "Because the curb is slick. You have a merger vote in 5 weeks. And if you break an ankle, Julian will call a leadership crisis." A laugh escaped her. Short, genuine. Claire paused before stepping in. "You make safety sound like strategy. It usually is." "No," she said softly. "Sometimes it is just safety." The car pulled away and I stayed under the awning until the tail lights disappeared into rain. The next 2 weeks became a rhythm of attacks and answers. Julian leaked a rumor about budget targets. We released audited projections. He suggested she had lost staff confidence. We published retention data and department head testimonials. He implied Nexus had concerns. Nora produced an email from Nexus praising the integration plan. Each attack came wrapped in concern. Each answer arrived wrapped in evidence. Near midnight, I found Claire alone in the 10th floor strategy room, sorting the same 3 rumor maps into the same 3 piles. I placed a ceramic mug of tea beside the nearest folder. "You've sorted that set 4 times. She looked down at her hands. "I know. Why?" If I stop moving paper, I start thinking. I sat across from her. "What are you trying not to think?" She looked toward the rain-washed window. "That they might believe him. After everything I built, every metric, every late night, every product we saved, they might still believe I'm too emotional to lead, because Julian made me look alone." I turned one rumor map around and uncapped my pen. "Then we make being alone irrelevant." Her eyes moved back to me. "How?" "Your leadership cannot depend on whether a room thinks you are loved. It has to depend on whether they can trace your decisions. We build a decision archive. Every major call from the last 6 months. Who advised? What data? What outcome?" Julian says unstable. We show process. Claire looked at the pen. "And the partner strategy support? Not proof." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she slid the first stack toward me. "Start with a Phoenix server farm." We worked until 2:00. M across the table. Paper between us. By the end, the archive had 27 entries and 1 sticky note from Claire. "Miles hates vague verbs." I circled hates and wrote, "strongly discourages." She saw it and smiled. Then Julian found the parking garage photo. It happened 3 days before the board retreat. Nora called my secure line at 7:40 a.m. Miles Claire's office. Now, Claire stood by the window when I arrived, one arm folded across her waist, the other holding her phone. Nora sat at the desk with an iPad facing outward. On the screen was an email sent to the entire board from an anonymous account. Attached was a long-lens photograph of Claire and me in the underground parking garage 2 weeks earlier. The angle was distorted, shot from behind a concrete pillar. It showed me handing Claire a thick manila envelope. The caption read, "CEO Claire Thomas receives off-the-books cash package from PR manager amid merger instability." Claire's face had gone very still. "That envelope was the Phoenix server farm lease," she said. "The courier was late. You handed it to me so I could lock it in the executive safe." I know Nora's voice was cold. "Julian does not need it to be true. He needs Nexus to delay the vote while the board investigates fiduciary misconduct, false financial impropriety, merger risk, leadership suspension." Claire turned toward the glass. "I built this company from a laptop in a studio apartment, and he may take it with Shadow in a garage." For 1 second, no one spoke. Then I opened my laptop on her desk. "Nora, preserve all building logs, key card access, visitor records, security footage, courier records, server farm lease, chain of custody. Nobody deletes anything." 2. Nora was already typing. "Done." Claire looked at me. "What do we do?" "We do not hide." Her eyes sharpened. "We go to the board retreat." "Yes. If we hide, we validate the shadow. We walk into the light and make them look at the timestamp." The next 48 hours became a controlled burn. I slept in 90-minute blocks on my office sofa. Claire stayed with Nora, reviewing merger documents and decision archives. Ethan pulled event records from the garage photo night, including the courier delay and the exact time the lease binder arrived. I found the crack at 3:12 a.m., the morning of the board retreat. Not in the photo, in the visitor log. A private investigator had signed into the building at 10:06 p.m. under a subcontractor badge. His firm had been paid by a holding company tied to Julian. His camera model matched the embedded XIF data in the leaked file. Elevator records showed access to the garage level at 11:31 p.m. The photo had not been discovered. It had been commissioned at 9:00 a.m. Claire and I walked into the board retreat side by side. Nora walked behind us with the legal binder. Witnesses mattered. The boardroom was colder than the terrace had been. 12 directors sat around a long oak table. Julian sat near the far end, relaxed, almost cheerful. Claire took her seat at the head of the table. I stood to her right with the remote. Julian began before the chair finished opening the meeting. We have a severe fiduciary concern. A photograph appears to show our CEO receiving an off-book package from her own PR manager in a private garage late at night. Given the Nexus morality clause in the final merger vote, I move to suspend Claire Thomas pending investigation. A murmur moved through the table. Claire did not look at me. She opened her folder. There will be no suspension, she said, because there was no off-book package. There was a lease binder. Julian gave a soft laugh. A convenient explanation. I clicked the remote. The wall screen changed. Phoenix server farm lease notary timestamp. Courier delay notice. Lobby handoff footage. Executive safe access log. October 14th. I said the physical lease binder for the Phoenix server farm required wet signatures and executive storage. The courier delay is documented. The lobby handoff is documented. The binder thickness matches the item in the photograph. The executive safe log shows Claire secured the lease 13 minutes after receiving it. Julian leaned back. That explains an envelope. It does not explain why the photograph was taken. No, I said this does. I clicked again. Visitor log, private investigator badge, XF data, garage elevator access, payment trail. Nora stood and distributed printed packets. The original file contained embedded XIF data. Gave one short nod. Then Claire crossed the stage, stepped down, and walked toward me in full view of the company. Not perform, not approve. She stopped at a respectful distance, held up the black mug she had placed on my desk that morning, and said, "You left this in your office." I took it. Inside was a folded sticky note. Dinner at 7. I looked at her. No strategy. No strategy. Nor see beside us. I want it noted that I am off duty after 6. Ethan leaned in. I can recommend a restaurant with terrible lighting and excellent privacy. Claire smiled. No terrible lighting. We are done hiding. The merger closed 2 weeks later. Julian resigned from the board before legal filed. Nexus completed the vote without delay. The false HR rumor died. The parking garage photo became evidence in a sealed complaint instead of a headline. Claire stayed CEO. I stayed at the company. But the first thing we changed was the reporting structure. Nora moved my review permanently to the communications committee. Claire insisted on it before I could ask. It has to stay clean. She said it. I looked at the signed memo. It already is. Then we keep it that way. That was Claire. Romantic. If you knew how to read governance. On the evening the merger closed, the company hosted a small reception on the same waterfront terrace where Julian had first tried to turn her isolation into a weapon. The flowers were still there. The water still flashed silver. The donors still pretended not to stare. Only this time, Claire did not stand alone near the planters. She stood at the center of the terrace, speaking to staff, investors, and engineers with the ease of a woman whose footing had returned. Her floral dress moved lightly in the breeze, softened by a pale jacket. When someone made her laugh, her hand lifted toward her mouth for 1 second before she let the laugh show. This time, she was not covering fear. She was keeping joy from spilling too fast. I stood near the balustrade, watching sightlines out of habit. Claire caught me doing it. She excused herself from the group and walked over, still tracking the room. Professional defect. Anything dangerous? I scanned the terrace. Ethan arguing with the caterer about microphone placement. Nora refusing a second glass of champagne because she did not trust celebratory decision-making. The board chair speaking calmly with Nexus counsel. No Julian. No whispered threat. No phone angled like a weapon. No, I said nothing dangerous. Claire stood beside me close enough for conversation, not performance. The sun lowered over the water. For once, I did not calculate the exit routes first. She looked at the terrace, then at me. So what now, Miles? I touched the black mug sitting on the balustrade beside my folder. Dinner at 7. And after that, I looked at the woman I had first protected with facts, then trusted with the truth. After that, I said, we stopped calling it a campaign. Claire smiled. Easy. That was the part that still surprised me. Not how hard the 6 weeks had been. How easy the truth felt once we stopped using it as cover. The end. Closing thoughts. Core lesson. The safest love does not ask you to perform. It gives you room to choose. Green flag. They protect your name without taking control of your voice. Please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like. Gave one short nod. Then Claire crossed the stage, stepped down, and walked toward me in full view of the company. Not perform, not approve. She stopped at a respectful distance, held up the black mug she had placed on my desk that morning, and said, "You left this in your office." I took it. Inside was a folded sticky note. Dinner at 7. I looked at her. No strategy. No strategy. Nor a us. I want it noted that I am off duty after 6. Ethan leaned in. I can recommend a restaurant with terrible lighting and excellent privacy. Claire smiled. No terrible lighting. We are done hiding. The merger closed 2 weeks later. Julian resigned from the board before legal filed. Nexus completed the vote without delay. The false HR rumor died. The parking garage photo became evidence in a sealed complaint instead of a headline. Claire stayed CEO. I stayed at the company. But the first thing we changed was the reporting structure. Nora moved my review permanently to the communications committee. Claire insisted on it before I could ask. It has to stay clean. She said it. I looked at the signed memo. It already is. Then we keep it that way. That was Claire. Romantic. If you knew how to read governance. On the evening the merger closed, the company hosted a small reception on the same waterfront terrace where Julian had first tried to turn her isolation into a weapon. The flowers were still there. The water still flashed silver. The donors still pretended not to stare. Only this time, Claire did not stand alone near the planters. She stood at the center of the terrace, speaking to staff, investors, and engineers with the ease of a woman whose footing had returned. Her floral dress moved lightly in the breeze, softened by a pale jacket. When someone made her laugh, her hand lifted toward her mouth for 1 second before she let the laugh show. This time, she was not covering fear. She was keeping joy from spilling too fast. I stood near the balustrade, watching sightlines out of habit. Claire caught me doing it. She excused herself from the group and walked over, still tracking the room. Professional defect. Anything dangerous? I scanned the terrace. Ethan arguing with the caterer about microphone placement. Nora refusing a second glass of champagne because she did not trust celebratory decision-making. The board chair speaking calmly with Nexus counsel. No Julian. No whispered threat. No phone angled like a weapon. No, I said nothing dangerous. Claire stood beside me close enough for conversation, not performance. The sun lowered over the water. For once, I did not calculate the exit routes first. She looked at the terrace, then at me. So what now, Miles? I touched the black mug sitting on the balustrade beside my folder. Dinner at 7. And after that, I looked at the woman I had first protected with facts, then trusted with the truth. After that, I said, we stopped calling it campaign. Claire smiled. Easy. That was the part that still surprised me. Not how hard the 6 weeks had been. How easy the truth felt once we stopped using it as cover. The end. Closing thoughts. Core lesson. The safest love does not ask you to perform. It gives you room to choose. Green flag. They protect your name without taking control of your voice. Please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like.